Number 1. Sorry, we don't have that. I wonder how many people listening to these stories remember video stores. I know there are still a few here and there, but I have no idea how they continue to survive. What I do know is most of them are gone, and that when I used to work at one, I found them to be a really creepy place to be at night. For some stupid reason, before Blockbuster closed, they thought it would be a good idea to stay open until 2 a.m. in the summer, because apparently people just get cravings to rent movies in the middle of the night, and we had to be there to fulfill that need. Yeah, it made no sense. What it did make was for grouchy employees sitting around in empty stores, jumping at every little noise because you could never tell if there was someone hiding behind those tall shelves. And that's exactly when the story takes place. The sweltering summer heat and the industrial air conditioning combined in the large windows in front to cause them to be completely fogged up. The store was silent as I muted the annoying trailer that we kept on loop at all hours of the day, having heard it one too many times already. My manager was in the back doing manager things, which I assume meant jerking off or something, and I was standing up at the counter bored as ever, having completed every closing duty possible an hour before close. I couldn't even remember when the last customer had come in. In fact, now that I thought about it, I couldn't remember where the last customer left. Suddenly I wasn't sure that I was alone in here after all. I decided to do a sweep of the store just in case. So I left the front and walked along the new release wall, looking into aisle after aisle as I passed it. The shelves in the middle of the store were 6 feet tall, so I couldn't see most people without doing this. I passed drama and action without seeing a soul, but when I reached comedy, I heard a noise further up the aisle. Nothing sinister, just the light thunk of DVD cases bumping into each other. Either the manager had come out of the back without me knowing, or we had a customer in the store. Yay. The noise was coming from further down, closer to the anime and horror section. I decided to go say hi and see if they needed anything. As I got closer, I noticed the sound again. I assumed they were picking up the boxes to read and putting them in the wrong place, causing them to bang into the other boxes. More stuff for me to clean up, I guess. The first thing I saw as I reached the aisle was the empty DVD boxes lying all over the floor. And what the hell? I hadn't heard any crash or anything. When I rounded the corner, I saw him sitting in the middle of the aisle, with all the cover boxes lying around him. I stood there and watched as he would pick one up, study it, and put it back down on the floor. What was he doing? I was very pissed that I was going to have to clean this mess up. "Sir, can I help you?" I was a bit snippy, because I was annoyed and I instantly regretted it. He turned to look at me, but it was the strangest movement ever. He moved in a slow, jerky motion like a robot. When his eyes met mine, well, they didn't. His eyes were vacant, and he smiled and just said, "You don't have it." I was chilled, far beyond the air conditioner. I backed up a step. "What don't we have, sir?" "You don't have it," he said again, tilting his head at me. Apparently I was supposed to know what he was talking about. I'm sorry. If you can tell me what you're looking for, maybe I can help you." But I was thinking, fuck that. I don't want to help this guy. Get him out of my store. He turned away from me and hung his head, still sitting on the floor. No, it's no good. You don't have it. You don't have it." He began to stand up, and I took a step back. "Yeah, well, sorry," I said, as he jerkily got to his feet. I had no idea what was going on with this guy. We can't carry everything. Now he was standing there looking at his feet, or at the mess he created on the floor. Either way, he was looking down and not at me. I was silently grateful about that. I didn't like those eyes at all. Well, we close soon, I lied. We still had at least an hour. It must have been the wrong thing to say. His head snapped up and he stared at me. Instead of vacant eyes, they were piercing. I backed up again. You don't have it, he said again. You don't have it. He began walking toward me. I backed right into the new release wall without knowing I was moving. I felt the shelves hit me in the back and DVDs tumbled down around me. I turned and bolted to the back door where the manager would be. The big, lovely metal door that locked automatically. You don't have it, he bellowed over and over again. I heard the crunch of DVDs under his feet as he chased me. You don't have it. I reached the back door and pounded frantically on it, screaming to be let in. The manager opened the door and I nearly knocked him over in my haste to get behind that door. He must have seen what I was running from because he slammed the door quickly, then helped me from the floor, where I fell once my shoes had left the carpet and hit the slick floor of the back room. What the? I don't know, I interrupted. Call the police. There was pounding on the door as the man reached it, punctuated by cries of, You don't have it! And suddenly, there was nothing. We stood there staring at each other. The manager finally grabbed the phone and called the police. I sat in the chair at the desk and my eyes fell on the monitors for the security system. Obviously, whatever the manager had been doing back here didn't involve watching them. I scanned them, but then saw no sign of the guy. Just a huge mess that was left behind of the scattered boxes and the DVDs I had knocked off the release wall. He had left so quickly? The police came and took her statements. The manager gave them the security footage, which did show everything that had happened, which made me feel a little more sane. But no arrest was ever made, to the best of my knowledge. I never knew who he was, or what he wanted, or what was wrong with him. And I never knew what it was that we didn't have. Number 2. Night shift. It began with a phone call. There were still 20 minutes to closing time, and I was alone. One of the benefits of being a manager in a fast food burger chain, when the budget cuts force you to break the always 2 employees in the building rule. I hadn't seen a customer in an hour, and I was counting the minutes until I could lock the doors. I'd already finished most of the closing duties that could be done while we were open, and I was sure I could be out in 10 minutes after close if we didn't get anybody else to come in. My heart dropped when I heard the phone ring. I knew it was going to be a customer asking when we closed so they could sneak in at 5 till and give me the most complicated order they could think of to ensure I didn't make it home until a good hour after I'd planned. I took a deep breath and slipped into customer service mode. Picking up the receiver, I rattled off the expected greeting and waited for the inevitable question. It sounded like one of those rubber horns they use to put on bikes. Hello? Realizing I was being pranked, I rolled my eyes and hung up the phone. At least it wasn't a customer intent on ruining my night. I checked my watch. 15 minutes to go. I walked into the back to check that everything that could be turned off had been, when my eye caught movement at the drive-thru window. I turned to look, and there at the window was a clown. A clown was standing outside the drive-thru window staring at me. I shook off my surprise. I can't serve you through the drive-thru without a car. Please come in the front. He continued to stare and didn't respond. His bright red nose was practically touching the glass. The front, please, I repeated. We have to close soon, though. With a... He stepped away from the window, and I assumed he was going to the front door. Well, this is fucking weird, I thought. I finished what I was doing and went back to the front, but the dining room was empty. No clowns. Maybe they were just screwing around, or maybe they changed their mind. I had about 8 minutes to close, and I was not going to worry about some stupid prankster. I stepped into the back again, and shut off the music that we piped into the dining room. I hated this CD, the same shit over and over again. In the silence, however, I heard another noise. It sounded like some sort of music. It was really quiet. I stepped into the front again, in search of the sound, and recognized the tinkling tunes of a music box. What the hell's going on? I still didn't see anyone in the dining room. I walked towards the far end of the counter and realized the music was coming from the hall that led to the restrooms. The door to that hall was in the kitchen, so I went back there. But when I looked towards the door, I saw framed in the porthole window the staring face of the clown from the drive-thru. I found myself suddenly grateful that that door was locked from the kitchen side. The music box continued to play, and the clown continued to stare through the window. His face was slack, no smile, no frown, just a blank stare. His makeup, though not smeared, looked somehow faded, and there was more skin tone than white, though he still had a bright red mouth, an exaggerated blue eyeshadow, and of course, a big red rubber nose. What the hell was going on? I mean, who was this guy? Was he just messing with me? Or was he some sort of psycho? Somehow I managed to find my voice. I'm sorry we're closed. You'll have to leave. I didn't care that we likely had 10 minutes left. Policy be damned. I wanted this guy out of my store. He showed no sign that he had heard me. He continued to stare through the window. I knew I wasn't truly safe. Even though the store was locked, there was nothing keeping this clown from climbing over the front counter and coming right into the kitchen. The back office was the safest place for me to go, and I was pretty certain I could get there before he made it to the front counter, much less over it. But I really didn't want to have to find out. Sir, please exit the building. We're closed. Come back tomorrow. I expected nothing, but to my surprise he moved. He lifted a small rubber horn to the window and squeezed it slowly, then turned and left the window. I bolted to the back room, my rubber-soled shoes squeaking on the slick floor. As soon as I reached the office, I slammed the door. It was a large, heavy metal door designed to protect from robberies. Even though it locked automatically, I double-checked it to be sure and ran to the desk. I grabbed the phone and quickly dialed 911. And they probably thought I was crazy or full of shit. A clown was in the restaurant, and their squeaks were scary. It sounded silly, but it didn't matter. They were coming anyway. While I waited, I listened to the silence around me. Was he still out there? Had he left? Was he stealing from the till? Not that I cared if he did. I was just happy I didn't hear pounding or scratching at the door. Nothing to indicate that this creepy bastard was trying to get to me. But maybe that was his game. Maybe he was just patiently waiting for me to come back out. I imagined him standing just feet away on the other side of the door, waiting for me to open it to see if he was still there. I listened hard for the sound of the honking horn or the music box, but I heard nothing. Finally, the police arrived, and it was their knock I answered. I admit I still thought I'd see the clown when I opened the door, but there's an officer of the law, and I'd never been so happy to see a cop. By the time I finally got out that night, it was well after closing. The cops didn't find the clown, but what they did find was the music box sitting on the counter. When you opened it, there was a little dancing ballerina clown, and it played that tinkling music I would never forget. It's been 2 weeks, and I've not seen the clown again, nor heard of any more sightings. But I'll tell you, budget cuts be damned. I'm never going to be alone in that place at night again. Number 3. Always lock your phone. This actually happened some time ago. I can't even remember if it was possible to lock a phone back then. I had a LG chocolate before the time of smartphones, and I used that phone for everything. Specifically, I used that phone to take some very personal photos that I sent to my long-distance boyfriend. I don't know what it is about using cameras to take pictures of naughty things, but it's been going on since cameras were invented. It's really kind of interesting if you look into it, but I digress. The point is that I had taken some very personal photos for my boyfriend, and I never deleted them, or apparently locked my phone. Then came the day when my boyfriend was coming to visit, and I had to drive to the airport after work to pick him up. I worked at a big-name cell phone retail store, so lucky for me I had two phones. The personal one I told you about, and my work phone. When I got out of work the night I was to pick up my boyfriend, I went to the Target by my work to grab a few things before I headed out. What I didn't know was that when I got into my car, I somehow dropped my phone in the Target parking lot. I realized when I was halfway to the airport. I pulled over to text my boyfriend, only to realize I didn't have my phone. Luckily I had my work phone, which I used to call my chocolate. I was hoping someone would pick it up so I could ask them to return it to my work, as it was right next door. 3 times I called and it rang until it went into voicemail. On the 4th ring, however, I got an answer. Hello? It was a male voice. I was thrilled to hear it. I told him my name and was just telling him about where I worked when the phone call cut off. Frustrated, I called back, but it went straight to voicemail. The battery had died. I would have to hope that the man who found the phone would charge it and call back. Until then, there was nothing I could do, so I used my work phone to contact my boyfriend and was off to the airport to pick him up. He was in town for a week, and during that time I heard nothing about my phone. Calling not only ever went to voicemail. I'd also taken the week off, but I did call in to ask if anyone had dropped off my phone, and they had not. A week went by, and my boyfriend eventually went back home, and I went back to work. I had decided that my phone was gone, and I was going to have to replace it. I had insurance, so it wasn't going to be a problem, but I still felt a loss. But before I put in the claim, I received a call on my work phone. It was my chocolate. Excited, I answered the phone. Yes, you found my phone? You work at the phone store in the Target parking lot, right? Yes, could you please bring me my phone? I've seen you. I'm in there all the time. I'd be happy to bring you your phone. You seem like a nice guy, perfectly pleasant. I was about to ask when he thought he might come in, when he said, "You have some very lovely pictures on your phone." A flush of embarrassment washed over me as I realized what pictures were on my phone. I hadn't even thought about someone going through the pictures. His voice went hushed, and it gave me a chill. I really like seeing so much of you. I'd like to see it in person. I'm sorry, I have a boyfriend. If you could just return my phone, please, I would like that. Otherwise, I'll just replace it, thanks. Oh no, I'll bring it to you. I have an account there. I see you all the time. I'll be right in after work. Bye, lovely girl. The call disconnected, and I had no idea what to think. I stood there with my phone to my ear, frozen for a moment before I finally put it away. Whatever. He would bring me my phone and I'd tell him I appreciated it, but I was spoken for, and he wasn't going to get to enjoy anything more than my pictures. I went back to helping customers and trying not to think about it, but in the back of my mind I kept wondering if every man who came to the counter was him. I felt naked to their eyes, though I was fully clothed. I began to get sick to my stomach. I finished taking a payment for one customer, and as they stepped from the counter, I was closing out their account, when the next person laid a chocolate phone on the counter. It was my phone. I looked up into the face of an average-looking, middle-aged man. He smiled, and it seemed like a normal, warm smile. I felt exposed, but I also felt like I'd been worried for nothing. He was a normal person who just happened to see some pictures on a phone. It was embarrassing, but I guess I could be flattered that he liked them. I reached for my phone, and as my fingers touched it, his hand came down on mine. It was a gentle touch, but it was unwelcome. I quickly grasped the phone and pulled my hand back. I looked up at him, puzzled, and he was still smiling. He leaned closer over the counter and spoke in hushed tones. "I've done you a favor. I'm really looking forward to getting one in return." My hand seemed to sting where he touched me. My stomach soured. "Thank you for returning it, but I'm afraid that's all I can give you." "You're very beautiful," he continued as though I'd said nothing. "I come in here all the time to pay my bill, usually with my wife. Don't you recognize me?" Suddenly, I did recognize him. Just as he said, he and his wife came in every month to pay their bill. Yeah, I managed to say. "I'll try to come in without her next time. Thank you for the pictures." With that, he straightened up, turned, and left. I should have told someone then, but I didn't. I figured I had my phone, and when he came in, I'd just treat him like every other customer. And that's what I thought, anyway. Besides, what good would telling anyone do? What could they do about it? I was the one who took the dirty pictures. I felt like it was my fault for doing something naughty. I was foolish, and I deserved the attention I was getting because I brought it upon myself. That's what I was thinking every time I received a text from him the next few days. The first one was just, "You're so beautiful. I still have your pictures. I really like them." And that's when I realized he'd taken the pictures off the phone. Again, I hadn't even thought of that. So he was enjoying my private pictures even though I've gotten my phone back. It was the second text that really shocked me. It was a picture. Proof of his enjoyment of my pictures. At first I texted him back. I told him I had a boyfriend. I told him those pictures were for my boyfriend, and I never intended anyone else to see them. I told him I wasn't going to ever show him anything in person, and I begged him to leave me alone. For some stupid reason, I still didn't tell anyone else because I felt like it was my fault for taking the pictures to begin with. As if somehow doing something dirty, though it was in private and intended only for the viewing pleasure of my boyfriend, I had asked to be treated this way by some stranger. A week later, he came into the store to pay his bill. His wife was with him. They had an issue with the automated machine, and I had to help fix it. He stood too close as I knelt to work on the machine, and while his wife didn't seem to notice, I was very uncomfortably aware of the situation. And finally, I felt like I had to say something to someone. I spoke to my manager. I told him about losing my phone and about having some personal pictures on it. I felt ashamed as I told him and felt like he was judging me. He knew the person I was talking about, and his solution was that whenever this customer came in, he'd make sure that somebody else would help him. He would tell the guy that he was no longer allowed to talk to me. In these days of Me Too, this all seems quite inadequate. But it's how it went. After the manager spoke with him, there was a short period of silence. He stopped sending me messages, and I didn't see him in the store. Finally, I felt like he was going to forget about the whole thing. However, a week later, I worked the closing shift and went to the store on the way home, so it was nearly midnight when I pulled into the driveway. I got out of the driver's seat and shut it, then opened the back door to get out the groceries, when I heard the crunch of a footstep on the gravel. I turned around, grocery bag still in hand, to see him standing there in my driveway. I was stunned. How could this be possible? How did he know where I lived? Before I could think anything more, he stepped closer, too close. Had my car door been shut, I would have been pinned against it. As it was, the open door was to my right, and on the left I heard the clunk of the cans in the grocery bag hit the side of my car, and in my haste to back up, I knew at that moment he could push me into the back seat, and I would have little ability to defend myself once there. He was sniveling on about my having betrayed him. I really wasn't listening. I was focusing on the straps of the double-bagged plastic of my left hand, and not on being pushed to the back seat where the rest of my groceries sat. In my right hand I was still clutching my keys. It was risky to move my right hand, as it was keeping me balanced and free from falling back into the car, but I had to do it. I pulled my hand away and jabbed at his face with my key, forcing him to stumble backward and giving myself the room I needed. I pushed myself away from the car and swung the bag of groceries at him. I was hoping to hit him in the head, but I think I hit his shoulder and chest instead. It was still enough to knock him onto his ass. I ran for the front door. I felt his hand on my ankle, but I kicked him off and just ran. When I got to the door, I was never more grateful to only have 2 keys. I unlocked it and slid in, slamming the door behind me and throwing on the chain. I heard him slam up against the door, and he began pounding on it, demanding to be let in, saying I owed him this and so much more nonsense. Since this was a time before landline phones were obsolete, I was able to grab mine and call 911. At the first sound of a siren in the distance, the pounding stopped. They caught him on his way back to his car, parked around the corner. I'll spare you the court details, as it never went very far. I don't really understand why not, but this isn't the place to argue that. What I do know is that a month later his wife came into the store to pay her bill by herself and remove her now ex from the account. And no matter how annoying it is to have to unlock my phone every time I want to use it, I always lock my phone. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, feel free to click the subscribe button and the bell below, or wait for the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment, and share the video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.